Fit to Love, episode 157, Healing Your Patterns from Childhood and Family.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Thoughtful Thursdays. Today's show, Healing Your Patterns from Childhood and Family. We have back for the third show, Lynne Forrest. Lynne Forrest is a reality guide and personal growth mentor. Lynne was educated through a lifetime of studying and observing metaphysical life principles taught to her early in life and learning how to apply those principles to her own life in positive ways. She's been sharing her findings with others and watching their lives transform since the 70s and has supported herself and her family through a private practice which was founded on those principles in 1985. Lynne came up through the ranks of experiential learning rather than the more traditional academic route. She started out in the mental health field in the early 70s, hired and trained by an HMO in social work and mental health. She's been in the field of personal growth ever since. Moving to the addictions field in the early 80s, where she was one of the pioneers for codependency and family of origin work in Chattanooga, Tennessee. As a perpetual student of life and consciousness, Lynne has devoted her career to studying with the masters of various disciplines: family dynamics, Jungian principles, dreams and shadow work, psychodrama and energy, as well as the laws of manifestation, body-oriented practices such as yoga, physical unwinding, and qigong are just some of the approaches Lynne applies to her work with others. Welcome back, Lynne.
Thank you, JJ.
So today we're talking about healing your patterns from childhood and family. And if you're just joining us for the first time, this is the third show, and they are in sequential order, but you won't necessarily need to go back and listen to all three. However, I will highly recommend that you go back and listen to all three. The first one is Transforming Drama to Peace, and the second one is Are You a Victim, Rescue, or Persecutor? So we're working with patterns of behavior from birth, learned patterns, and with the idea of the victim triangle or the drama triangle and where we're operating from in terms of our belief systems and how we're showing up in life and if we're stuck, if we're conscious or we're unconscious. So Lynne, let's start with the question of when do core beliefs form?
By the age of 5, we have a core belief theme in place. So those first, and frankly, now, through epigenetics, we have, since it's been established through epigenetics, that genes actually change in the moment, and therefore the DNA is constantly changing. And we actually inherit our beliefs lineage, our belief system through our DNA. So we'll actually inherit the core beliefs of our family lineage at birth. Will come into that setup. And that, to me, is not a hopeless thing at all. What that tells me is that it's by design. It's built into our very structure that we are here to experience a particular core beliefs and to flesh them out so that we can better see them. I like to think that we as souls say yes to making this courageous journey to boot camp Earth, because it is boot camp here. You will notice, look around at the way every thought that has ever been thought or believed is made concrete, fleshed out in form here on this planet. And that is what this planet is about. And when we begin to understand that, we find a lot less resistance to it than to align with those same reality principles that create the belief system we carry, to co-create the world that we want instead. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
Well, absolutely. So how do we know then if we're acting out of a core belief, or is it just a genuine reaction? How do we make the distinction?
Well, if it sets up resistance in us, if we find ourselves wanting to argue, defend, prove them wrong, prove ourselves right, compete, if we find ourselves any what I call low frequency feeling gives us an alert that we're on the victim triangle in victim consciousness, which is a state of mind that is predominated by blame and that looks at the outside world and says, that's out there is what's causing me to feel bad. And therefore, And this is where control, this is what control is really about, JJ, is all control is based on the belief that something out there is making me unhappy. And so, of course, what I need to do is take control of that thing out there and make it stop doing that. Make it stop hurting me. And this is what we're basically what we're doing. We're walking around in life trying to get the world to stop hurting us, not understanding that the world is not hurting us. It's not acting upon us at all. It's simply reflecting to us, literally reflecting to us, like a mirror reflects to us, the systems that we are operating out of in our own minds. And that's its purpose. So we have this belief system we come into life with, and by the age of 5, it is firmly in place, and then we spend the rest of our life proving it out unless or until life intervenes, until consciousness intervenes, until something happens that intervenes on that old pattern and causes us to begin to question it. And that's what we call awakening.
All right, let's talk about that concept of awakening and that idea, because I know for me, when I look back at what has happened, things I've contributed to, the state of consciousness of certain people, because it sounds like obviously our core beliefs start very, very early. And then at some point we have that awakening. But does awakening absolutely happen? I mean, I've seen people who are not young, who are not awake, in my opinion, that they keep operating out of what we've been talking about for the last 3 shows about being a victim or being a persecutor. These belief systems rule their life and their decisions and their relationships. So is it part of our human journey that everyone awakens, or do some people not become awake?
The law says we get to choose. The universal law says we have free will. And we can choose to believe. And what that means, the one thing we really, really have free will over is whether or not to believe what we think. And we always are given that choice. The universe will never intervene on that. It's always waiting for us to choose the moment of our awakening. And number one. And number two, sometimes people have awakened, or let's just say that there's a way of looking at it, the Eastern way, that suggests that every soul upon leaving, because of course they believe in reincarnation and that kind of thing. I don't know. I just know we're eternal beings. I figure with 400 billion galaxies out there, there's other places to go and do and see. And I'm, we're eternal beings because we're energetic. And energy never dies. It changes form, but it never dies. And so we are of that. We're made of that energetic essence that is eternal. And so the Easterners believe in an incarnation that depending on the sort of the belief system that you exit on, the frequency of vibration that creates for you, that energetic transmission will be what carries you into family. It's some freak accident that you land in the family you do. We all end up exactly in the family that we came to experience. And I know this is hard for us because those of us who have difficult family lives, and they are the ones who are planted in our back pockets, so close to us that because they love us so much, they're willing to open their mouths and say the things that we, on some level, are afraid are true anyway. And that's why it creates such a resistance in us. Because anytime we have a resistance, anytime we have a low frequency response to someone's behavior or something they say to us or something they tell us, or anytime we resist them, we know that we have just spotted exactly what it is that we're out of harmony, where it is we're out of harmony within our own mind. And that's their purpose. Their purpose is not to agree with us, nod their head, and be our number one fan club. Their purpose is to help us recognize, initiate us, the parents that we have who are abusers and that kind of thing. It's like, that's the path we came to move through. How do we know that? Because it's where we are. And only if you accept the understanding that there are no coincidences, there is no mistake, and that what we encounter is an energetic match for us, whether we like it or not. It's not ours to debate whether or not we're supposed to have it, because we wouldn't be having it if it weren't meant to be, if it weren't part of our makeup dynamic. It's just a matter of, do I choose to believe the same old story, or am I choosing to line up with reality? And moment to moment. So awakening is the choice to align with reality, with the way things are, with the understanding of the universe that sees a benevolent world, that sees a world working with me to awaken me, not a world that's out to get me. That is a story about the world.
Let's talk about that dynamic, though, of that the difference between someone who has chosen to see it as an observer, see it as divine choice. I don't know if you know the work of Carolyn Mace, but I'm a big fan of Carolyn's work and of the idea that we choose our families and we choose all parts of our life, really, before we ever incarnate into physical form when we get here. So I'm one with you there, and I do believe in incarnation. So that we're energy and matter energy can't be destroyed, and that we're just physical or non-physical, and sometimes we're both. So with that said, let's take the family dynamic of someone who's choosing to step back and see sort of the inner workings and the higher purpose of it all, and use that observer practice and use that, what would you call it? Observer mindset?
I call it observer consciousness.
Okay, so using the observer consciousness, but then you have a whole slew of people who are stuck on the victim triangle as victims. Let's talk about that dynamic, because for myself as well as others that might be listening, that is it just about the acceptance for the observer to understand that progression in that dynamic in order to sort of accept, heal, and vibrate at a frequency that is more loving, more open, more conscious, more aware?
There's no way of protesting victim consciousness that is not on the victim triangle. There is no way to fight it and not end up in it. You cannot resist it and win. There's only one way to make peace with victim consciousness, and that is to recognize it as what is for us, for the opportunity to refine us. So those people around us who don't appear to have awakened, who are very much dancing the dance on the triangle, are there for our learning purposes. Everyone's a teacher. Everyone we encounter either teaches us through inspiration, they inspire us to want to model after them, or they inspire us through contrast. They show us what we don't want. And both are viable teachers. And sometimes those who show us through contrast, they bring that emotional response that really, really highly intensifies the desire in us not to go that route and to seek other ways. They are very often the ones who set us on a seeker's path. And so you see, their role is sacred. And just because we don't recognize them, we want to judge them as sick, as dysfunctional, as these are all labels, these are all stories we have about them, rather than recognizing the service they render. And we don't know, for instance, if you believe in reincarnation, you don't know, for instance, that particular thorn in your side of a mother, father, brother, sister, husband is not exactly the opposite. An angel in disguise, someone who has come to reflect the places where you're in dissonance, where you are in disharmony with yourself. I've yet to find, and pointing the finger at someone else and blame them. This is just me. You just check it out for yourself. But for me, I've yet to find that when I was busy pointing the finger at what they were doing to me, or how they weren't doing it right, or what they needed to do differently, that when I really followed that finger inward to my own belief system, that I did not find some correlation with what they were doing and what I was doing, usually in that very moment, either with them or myself. So you see, the world really is a mirror. But I say to people, don't take my word for this. Check it out for yourself.
No, and I absolutely agree. I guess the question, maybe let me refine the question. So let's say something, and that's all great because maybe someone else needed to hear it exactly in that way. let's take a situation where a family, whatever it may be, there's an issue and it breaks the family, whatever really, or breaks the marriage or breaks the relationship, and the person who decides to take the observer position and recognizes the gift and the lesson and the mirror in it and does the work and elevates themselves, if you will, or expands themselves or creates more awareness and doesn't necessarily feel like blame, but now there's a disconnect. And so then there's that curiosity of, okay, well, I don't have blame for you, and I'm just sad that that we don't have a relationship anymore. How that's what I'm trying to cross. Not saying that my unhappiness is your fault, because I can be happy, period. But that idea of family, or that, and again, maybe that's just a story, but I would think that our culture really talks about, and it's a chakra, right? It's the first chakra, root chakra idea of community and our tribe. So it's that bridging that gap, or of, is there any responsibility, not responsibility, because that's a rescuer conversation for sure. Just, I guess, once you can stand back and be the observer and take the contrast to the level of which you've asked for it to teach you. I mean, I know I've been doing it with several things in my life, and I appreciate and know exactly what benefits have come from these different contrasts. But then as I look back on the past as what's happened and look forward to the future and just wonder, will those relationships ever come back, or will they ever transform into even a better place? What would you say to that?
There's two responses to that on two different levels. And first of all, for me personally, the approach I've taken with our clan, we have 7 children between us, and I have 2 siblings, and he has a sister, and so we have, we have lots of extended family, and some of which there were real gaps in my relating with them and their relating with me. A lot of old pain and trauma, again, growing up in a highly dysfunctional family, and having all the residue and the aftermath of that. I recognized that I was what we call in metaphysics, that it was about cleansing the bloodline, and that I was the one who had been tapped in my family to do that. And what that means is that it was, how do I know it was me? Because I was the first one who in the family who began to really awaken to tools of consciousness. And the route I chose for my family was to refine my consciousness to the place where I could hold love for them from wherever I am or wherever they are. And there was an alienation for some years between one of my daughters and myself. It goes all the way back to my drug years when she was a little girl, and all the hurt and the betrayal she felt then, that she had a very difficult time giving up. And so there was a lot of distance and a lot of anger that we had for one another for various reasons, but mostly for me it was a lot of guilt, and that I covered with anger. For her it was just anger and hurt, and not feeling abandoned and rejected. And so that went on for years, where there was just so much bitterness and vitriol between us. And I remember, and I tried all sorts of approaches, with it, with her, including just distance, and all of that. But, I remember the time I said to her, sweetie, I understand that there is space between us and distance between us, and that there's a lot of old hurt there. And I get it, and I respect your right to sit with it as long as you need to, because I trust your process. And all I want to know from you is just to figure out, what distance do you need me, so that you can feel safe and free to have your process without feeling like I'm barging in or invading your space, and I will just back up to there and love you from there. And that became my whole approach with her. So I let her decide for me, kind of decide for us where the boundary needed to be. And then I just loved her from there. Which meant, what did that mean? That meant not talking about her to her siblings. It meant not furthering story happiness between us. It meant reinforcing and holding a vision of her in my mind of what I believed was possible between us, and of always playing that part of that vision that I held in that vision as my part in our relationship, whether or not she was able to meet me there. And after some years of that, and I will tell you, it took some years, and it's really only been in the last 3 years that our relationship, she's now in her mid 40s, that our relationship has turned that curve where she has embraced me and allowed me to love her again, to love her freely and openly and at close range. And what a beautiful gift to herself, to give herself that love. So sometimes what we must do, when we understand that love is the most potent force there is, it conquers everything. That is not just platitudes. That's reality. Love is a potent force, and everyone wants it. Everyone wants to be loved. I don't care what defenses they may put up to block it. They want to be loved. But when they feel the sting of our judgment, when they feel that they're not acceptable to us, and that we, especially if it feels to them like we are coming from some self-righteous place of having figured it all out, and now we've left them behind and blah, blah, blah. If there's any of that, they don't feel love, and that creates that. When I can accept whatever love they have to offer in whatever form, and that was one of the big healings for me with my dad, was I began that he did what he did because he believed the stories he believed about himself, about life, and it had nothing to do with me. And that he struck out at me out of his own story about himself. What did that have to do with me? And as I got older, I began to just appreciate the ways he could love me. And it was hard to see in the beginning. But then it became, he would do it in little funny ways, like give me a hard time about who I was seeing. That was his way of cared, kind of thing. It was to begin to actually accept as loving the energy behind the act, even though the act itself is awkward and blundering because they don't really know how to show love. So there's that piece. And then there's another piece too, and that is that if I have a family member who is physically dangerous to themselves or me, then it is not kind for me or them to stick around and allow them to use me as a way to prove what it is their unhappy story is about themselves and the world. So in that case, that would be a time when I would want to give space and distance. Out of love. It's because I love you that I'm not willing to stick around, and because I know that it would be unloving for me to stick around, for you to do with me or to yourself what you do when you hurt me, really is what it is. I don't want to participate in that. And so I'm giving you space. And so it's that. So any of those can be true.
Thank you. I've heard cleansing the bloodline more than once. Let's just say that it's been told to me a couple times. So I appreciate that. And I definitely also can relate to that in a law of attraction sense, that there's not really any going backwards. It's always moving to a higher frequency, and definitely accepting where everyone is the best you can do and allowing them and loving them from that place. So I just wondered, with the work that you do and with the victim triangle, sort of applying that very specifically to this. So thank you for that explanation, both parts of that. Now I want you to let us know how we can stop reacting out of our core beliefs, and give us a few ways that we can start to change that, as well as how we can get more information from you and work with you and learn from you. But before we do that, I do need to take a break and thank our sponsors. Is your website working for you? If it's not, and you're frustrated with your brand, website, or current online results, Every Angle Media can help transform your existing business presence and build you a website that works when you're not working. Every Angle Media is a full-service web development firm that specializes in solving problems with open-source solutions. We offer complete design services, custom content management systems, fully integrated e-commerce solutions, cross-platform mobile development, and custom third-party integration, and we're here to help. Visit our site to see our work at everyanglemedia.com or give us a call at 310-798-7228. Again, that's everyanglemedia.com. What does your self-care routine have to do with dating and relationships? Everything. How you treat yourself is the blueprint for how you show others how to treat you. I call this your body blueprint. Ready to change your body blueprint and manifest better quality relationships and physical results? I am giving away free copies of the second edition of Fit to Love, How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life, when you subscribe to this podcast. Visit fittolove.tv/ebook to download your copy today. That's FIT2LOVE.tv/ebook. Let's transform your body and your relationship. Okay, Lynn, how can we stop reacting out of these core triggering beliefs or core ideas about who we are in the world and all of the interpretations that come along with that?
They've discovered in neuroscience that nothing exists until it's observed. So interesting. It's like that old cone that says, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, is there a sound? Does a tree make a sound? And this would suggest, this finding in neuroscience, because everything is made of energy, and energy has two forms. It's either state or wave. Either particle or wave. And wave is its unseen form, where it's pure energy, and moving is energy, and it disappears. It's not visible. And then the particle is when that form, that very energy, takes on a shape, takes on a density, takes on form. And so but energy is energy, whichever form it's in. It's just that it shows up and disappears upon observation. And what observation is the ability to hold the focus on, to simply watch. Because then and that's what we're asked to do, to move off the triangle. We become watchers. We become observers. We become that which stands out and becomes the lens holder. It's like if you imagine the observer as being an actual lens through which and imagine it like sunlight coming through a glass, like coming through a magnifying glass and shining on something. And of course it produces heat, and it'll actually start a fire that if the sun is bright enough through that magnetic glass, the looking glass, and focused on a set of twigs, or it will start a fire. It will change it. It will change the form of that which it's directed to. And that principle is the very principle that applies esoterically to our mental life, to our thought life. So when we find ourselves on the victim triangle, we want to move off of that downward facing triangle and move to the upper facing triangle, which is the reminder, the memory of who we really are. It's the trinity of aspects that make up our essence. And we do that through the observer consciousness. We do that by stepping back from the situation, and we have to put down judgment. We have to put down the guns, because otherwise we're not observing, we are reacting. And as long as we're reacting, we are feeding that which we're reacting to. We're making it bigger. The law is whatever I focus on gets bigger. So what we want to do with our beliefs is step back, hold the lens for source to shed its light observation on that which we are seeing in need of a higher frequency and need of transformation. And what happens is the light of that energy alone transforms it, changes it into something else. Now that sounds magical, and it is. There are tools, and mostly it's mental perceptions. It's asking ourselves questions, observer questions. In this work, we follow the questions instead of the answers. I'm much more interested, because answers are dead ends. And when we have an answer, our brain stops growing. It's called the neuroplasticity of the brain that allows the brain to actually expand and take in new information and grow. But when we think we know something, the pattern, the neural loop stops right there, and there's no more expansion of the brain. It's a dead end. Now we figured it out. We know there's no more growth in that area possible. So what in this work, what we do is we're not interested in finding the answers. We're interested in asking the questions that will take us deeper into the unwinding of an unhappy, untrue story that we have bought into at a very deep level, very early in life, even inherited, and stand back and look at it and ask ourselves questions like the reality formula in reverse. We ask, well, so what am I seeing? What are the effects of my belief systems in my life? How do people treat me? What am I reacting to? And when I react, what am I feeling? And when I feel that, how am I acting? How do I act when I feel that? And what do I believe behind it? And if I didn't believe that, and then we begin to explore other possibilities. Now we've looked at what we are believing. We want to introduce the possibility of something different, which is saying to the brain, I can choose to see this. And however I see it is what I will prove is true. So why wouldn't I choose to see this in a way that brings me more peace? And so that's how we begin to move off the triangle. And it's a process. But it can also happen very quickly. We see changes immediately with this work. As soon as we begin to practice just recognizing ourselves on the triangle, we begin to notice shifts.
And so when people want to get in touch with you for either session to work with you on this, or to get your book or your app, or to read more about it, where can they find you?
LynneForrest.com, LYNNEFORREST.com is my website. Go to my blog page there, learn about this new phone app that we just put out, downloading to build new neural pathways, NEURA, neural pathways to peace. And it's talked about on my blog. So when you go to my webpage, click on that, read The Faces of Victim, the article. I have a book out that's available on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. And sign up for the weekly downloads, messages that come every week to your address once you sign up, as an opportunity to continue to get tips and guidelines for moving out of victim consciousness. And all that's free of charge.
Excellent. Lynne, thank you so much for all 3 shows and for making time to help educate the world, inspire them, give them opportunity to see another way of thriving in their life and taking all those challenges and transforming them into peace. So thank you so much.
And thank you, JJ, for the work you do in the world and all that you put out there and give, and by modeling it through your own life.
Thank you. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT, the number 2, LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.